in modern history. From his example, every other black group took pages and reconstructed aspects of Garveyism. This year we celebrate Mr. Garvey because this is a centennial of his work and of his deeds. When we talk about the principles of Kwanzaa, for those of us who are Pan-Africanists, we can appreciate those principles because they did not start in 1966 with Dr. Malana Karenga. Every principle of Kwanzaa pre-existed, and every principle of Kwanzaa is an archetype of what the Garvey movement stood for. Whether we're dealing with unity, whether we're dealing with self-determination, whether we're dealing with purpose, whether we're dealing with collective work and responsibilities, these are aspects of culture that predate Garvey as well. But I think that they were most exemplified by the life and work of the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey. I say that because at this centennial of Garveyism, I think it's important that as African people, we look back and study that example that Mr. Garvey laid for us, because it is very clear to us right now, and it's being made clear in the media to us right now, that America, if you ever thought she wanted black people, you're crystal clear right now that she has never wanted you and still does not want you. And for those of us who study our history, we know that when the enslavement period ended for us, one of the first acts of the United States Congress was they passed a silent law which would pave the way for the gradual elimination of black people from this country. From 1865 to 2015, 150 years, we celebrate next Kwanzaa. That will be our 150th anniversary since the 13th Amendment. And the question we have to ask ourselves, after 150 years since the physical chains were off, the mental ones are still there, we know, but the physical chains, what do we have to show for it? A century and a half later, where are our independent schools, the way we need them to be, and being able to accommodate the size of children we have in the community? Where are the black supermarkets? Where is the black railway? Where's the black hospitals, the black gas stations, the dry cleaners? We once had all these things before. What happened? And why are we so content, most of all, with not having it?
That's the question.
Mr. Garvey said that any people that are dependent on another group of people for their livelihood, their health, their economics, their prosperity, is a race of people who sooner or later dies. You cannot exist dependent on white folk and think everything's going to be all right. So when we talk about unity, the first principle of Kwanzaa, Umoja, today, when we talk about unity, unity is natural for most people. Chinese can come into a room with other Chinese and they naturally click up. Arabs can come into the room with other Arabs and they naturally click up. Latinos can come into the room with Latinos. East Indians can come into the room with others of like kinship and click up. Only the Americanized African, only us, only we have an issue being able to click up in the collective. We like to click up in a small group. We like to click up and form all types of destructive clans. But when it comes time to click up our money, the clicks don't click as well. Why doesn't it come natural to us? Because our period of enslavement, the first thing it did was it de-Africanized us. And then after it de-Africanized us, it dehumanized us. So first I'm going to take your culture, and then I'm going to take your humanity. You will never understand post-traumatic slavery disorder. You will never understand the psychological residuals of the Ma'afa if you don't understand the dehumanization aspect of it. Right. Not just the whips and the chains, but what it did to the mind.
Amen.
I would argue that we have more self-hate amongst us today than we had 150 years ago. We don't have a million different groups and cliques because we need them. It's because we have a difficult time accepting internal racial authority. And why do we have such a difficult time accepting internal racial authority? Because at the end of the day, the white man has made it clear to everyone in this room that if you don't want to listen to a black person, you don't have to. So all of us have a trump card in our back pocket when it comes to working in black organizations. The white man does not sanction this, and when I get tired of it, he said, I can leave of my own free will. It's that lack of internal accountability that makes it so easy for black folk to walk away from something. We don't have to rehash what happened in Ferguson. We don't have to rehash what happened in New York with our brother Eric. We don't have to rehash what happened with Trayvon, what happened to the young brother in Cleveland where I'll be on the first Saturday of the new year. We don't have to talk about the young sister who was suffocated in the back of the police car not too long ago. And these stories go on for days, brothers and sisters, but let us be clear about something. The reason why it is coming back so blatantly, white folk do what they do not just because they're melanin deficient. They don't just do what they do because they're scared of genetic extermination. That's central to white supremacy. But that's not why it's being done in the final analysis. They're not doing it purely because they're wicked. That's a part of it, but that's not the reason it's happening. White folk are doing what they're doing to black people right now because they can. In other words, because we created an atmosphere right after the election of President Obama, not white folk, black folk, you in your celebrations, you in your idol worship of a politician, you allowed white folks to take race off the table. We created the atmosphere that let Zimmerman go free. Make no mistake, it wasn't the jury. It wasn't the grand jury. It wasn't the prosecutor. It wasn't the judge. It wasn't the state's attorney. Those white men walked because black folk for the past 6 years have been playing a post-racial tune. You gave white folks the alibi. We were the ones that raised the argument that because there's a black man in the White House, maybe we don't need black organizations. That came from black folks.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Because there's a white man in the White House, excuse me, a black man, well, he's a white man, but a black man in the White House. We said maybe America is changing its ways. I did a lecture on Obama right before he got elected, 2008, at the African American Museum of Philadelphia, where I predicted that the racism against African people would go back to a time that resembled slavery and Reconstruction by the time Obama came out of office. I said it while you danced in the streets, while you claimed that Jesus and Allah sent Obama. I'm just being real. Silly imams and silly pastors justifying white supremacy puppets with the use of their holy books. I'm just being honest. I said they're going to take us back to a time worse than slavery. How did I know that? I'm no prophet. It's because if you understand political science, you know what? White supremacy always operates more effectively behind a black face. Whenever you get a black mayor, whenever you get a black lieutenant governor, whenever you get a black governor, and there's been exceptions. We've had a few exceptions. There's been a few Adam Clayton Powells here and there, but they are the exception, not the rule. So I knew about putting Obama in office, they was about to set black folk up for a massive takedown. And these murders that we're seeing right now is what we call the early celebration. This is what we call the early celebration. When the 13th Amendment was passed, white folks celebrated by hanging blacks. When the president withdrew troops from the South at the end of Reconstruction, they celebrated by hanging blacks. And now white folks are only 18 months away from celebrating the removal of a black man from the White House. They've already started the celebration. See, when we talk about knowing your history, brothers and sisters, we're not just talking about ancient Africa. Some of y'all think that history is synonymous with ancient Africa. And this is one of the reasons why I've committed myself to building the Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey RBG International Leadership Academy for Black Boys. Because too many of our African-centered schools only want to teach ancient history. Our children need to know recent history. They need to know from where was it born that homosexuality would be so popular today. From where was it born that half the black men in America would be unemployed by 2014? From where was it born that the Latino struggle would trump the black struggle as the top civil rights issue? From where was it born that special education would be used as a secret school to prison pipeline? Speaking of that, parents, I'm upset with a lot of you because you're very hard of hearing. I thought I was doing a good job until I looked at some of the recent reports on the rise in special ed. So for all the talking, for all the articles, for all the interviews, for all the books, I'm still seeing the amount of black children in special ed skyrocket. Learning disability, skyrocket. Autism, skyrocket. Mental retardation, skyrocket. Emotional disturbance, skyrocket. Speech and language impairment, skyrocket. Developmental delay. But while all these special ed disabilities are going through the roof, the amount of black children being qualified with mental giftedness has steadily gone down. You can hardly find a black child qualified as mentally gifted today. Because the whole school system and most black parents are only looking for problems. Nobody's looking for the promise stories. So when we find an advanced black child, the average school doesn't have anything to do with them. No program to help the advanced black children because the whole focus is on the ones we claim have problems. The learning disability, weapon of mass destruction, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, weapon of mass destruction. Listen to me. Let me demystify the psychological evaluation. Because a lot of you parents have this magical concept of the psychological evaluation. So when I bring your child into my office to get tested, and y'all in love with tests, and I want y'all to stop getting y'all children tested. I got parents emailing me, can you recommend an